Okay, so again, Lamed Amud Aleph, approximately 10 lines from the bottom. Amar Lohen. Amar Lohen. I was just mentioning that this perek is really, this third perek is all Mishnayis. Not in every Gemara is the Mishnayis broken up into Mishnayis, but that is indeed what it is. So Amar Lohem, now we have the Mamaina, says to do, Se'u, go out, Vihiviu Tleh. Go out and bring a Tleh, bring a sheep from where? Me'lishkas HaTlayim, from the room of the sheep, of the lambs. This was a room where the lambs were examined. They made sure that there were no mumin, etc. Says the Gemara, where was this Lishkas HaTlayim? Lishkas HaTlayim, Lishkas HaTlayim was where Nisuna b'Miksaya Sfainis Ma'aravis. This room was in the northwestern corner. Says the Gemara of what? Of the Beis HaMaikad. Beis HaMaikad brings us back all the way to that first Mishnah. Remember, we learned that there were 3 places where the Kohanim watched. One of them was the Beis HaMaikad. If you remember, the Beis HaMaikad was a large building, was a building with a kippah, with a dome. Now we're learning that inside the Beis HaMaikad, there were multiple rooms. One of the rooms in the Beis HaMaikad was the Lishkas HaTlayim, in the northwestern corner, which is the room in which the Talayim, the lambs, were kept and checked, etc. Now, says the Gemara, once we're discussing the Beis HaMaikad, Arba Lishkais Hayasham. In the Beis HaMaikad, there were 4 Lishkais, there were 4 rooms. What were the 4 rooms? Achas Lishkas HaTlayim that we just spoke about. Achas Lishkas HaChaisamais. One was Lishka of the Chaisamais, which is literally, Chaisim is a seal or a receipt, that when they bought an animal for a karban, they would give them a receipt from that room. V'achas Lishkas Beis HaMaikad. One was the room of the Beis HaMaikad, which we've learned already. There was a fire over there to warm the Kohanim. Excuse me, we didn't learn that, but that's where there was a fire to warm the Kohanim that were sleeping. V'achas Lishka she'oisim b'lechem aponim. And one was the Lishka in which they created the lechem aponim. They created the lechem aponim, which was placed on the shulchan. So, okay, so where are we holding? We're holding that they took the tleh, they took the lamb. Next, nechlesu lishkas hakelim. Again, we're early in the morning. We're going over the process of the first avodos in the Beis HaMikdash. So nechlesu, we're 3 lines from the bottom of Lamed Amud Aleph. Nechlesu, the Kohanim entered L'lishkas hakelim, to the room of the kelim. What is the room of the kelim? This is the room that all the different kelim of the Beis HaMikdash were stored. And what would they take out? Vayitziu misham. They would take out from there Tishim ushleisha klei kasev ukleisav. 93 vessels, 93 kelim. 93 kelim. These were all the kelim that are going to be used for the entirety of the day. They placed them on a silver table that was standing over there. And now all the kelim, like before you make a barbecue, you set out all your utensils. Before the surgeon does his surgery, he sets out all his utensils. So before you start the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, you set out all the kelim. What happens next? Now we're all ready to start. So first thing is the karban tamid. So what do? Hishku es ha-tamid. You literally, hishku means you water. You give the karban tamid a drink. You give the animal a drink. From where? Bekais, and we turn over to Lamid Amid Beis. Bekais shells of. You give over the animal to drink in a golden kais. If you remember, we already discussed this golden kais. We discussed that there's a machlaikas that they actually give the karban tamid to drink from a golden kais. First of all, why do they give the karban tamid a drink? Because an animal that is very hydrated, an animal that has a lot of water inside of it, is easy to skin, to take the hides off the animal. So before they brought the karban, they wanted to make sure that the animal was well hydrated, number 1. Number 2, do they actually give it to drink from a golden kais? The answer to that question is, it was a machlaikas. One opinion said it was a guzma, it was an exaggeration. They didn't actually give an animal to drink from a golden cup. That's crazy. The other Mandamer said, no, they did. Why? Because ein anios b'makam ashiros. The Beis HaMikdash, the ultimate ashiros, Of course, even animals drink from golden cups. Says the Gemara, Afal Pishu Mevukar Mi Ba'aref, even though this carbon was checked in the evening, even though it already underwent the Bikor process, already underwent to ensure that there were no mumin, still, what do? Mevakar Naisai, they would check it again. La'or Avukais, they would check it again in the morning before they actually brought the carbon. They would check it again now through the light of the torches. So we have our animal ready. The animal is well hydrated, is well drank. The animal now is ready for the avodah. Says the Gemara in the second line, Lamed Amid Beis, Misha Ezacha B'Dishon Mizbeach HaPnimi. So our carbon tamid is ready. But now what do we got to do? We first got to clean off the ashes. We first got to get the Beis HaMikdash ready for the avodah. So Misha Ezacha, the one that was Zeicha B'Dishon Mizbeach HaPnimi. Again, the Mizbeach HaPnimi was the smaller Mizbeach, was the Mizbeach that they brought what on? The Ketores. So again, the words Misha Zacha, words we're going to see countless times throughout the Masechta. What does Misha Zacha mean? One who was Zaycha, one who won the lottery to perform this Avodah. So one that won the lottery to clear out the inner Mizbeach, Ubedishan HaMenoira, and to clear out the Menoira. Hayom Akdimin, they would come first. Va'arba Kelim Biyadam, and these Koyanim, the Koyin that is cleaning out the Menorah, the Koyin that is cleaning out the small Mizbeach, the two of them are holding 4 Kelim. What are the 4 Kelim? Matani Yakoz, Ushnei Mavteichos, the basket, the jug, and 2 keys. Explains the Gemara, what were these 4 Kelim? Matani, the basket was larger, was Daimir L'Tarkiv Shalzav, similar to a golden vessel that held Shalzav Shemachzikim Kabayim V'Chatzi, that held 2.5 kav. V'Akoz, the jug, was Daimir L'Kitin Gadol Shalzav, was like a large flask of gold. Shtei Mafteichos, and there were 2 keys. What were the 2 keys for? Echad Shu Yorid B'Amas HaShachi. One, he would lower his arm. V'Echad Shu Pasuach Kivein, and one in which you would open it up. It was an interesting lock. Most locks you open up straight, but over here the way he opened up the lock is he stuck his arm in around the bottom and he opened the lock. So there were 2 keys. One of them was a straight key. It was a double lock. So one was a straight key in the door to open the door. The other one, the way to open the door was you had to stick your hand through a hole, stick your hand down, and the bottom was another keyhole. They put their hand in and they open the lock. So 2 different keys, 2 baskets. Again, these are the Kohanim that are going into the Beis HaMikdash to do what? Clean out the Menorah, before you light the Menorah every day, and clean out the Mizbeach HaPnimi, the inner Mizbeach. Continues the Gemara, or about 8 lines down. The Kohanim come to the Pishbesh. What was the Pishbesh? We had this word before. Pishbesh is a small door. A small door within a larger door is a pishbesh. So the Kohen came to the pishbesh Hatzvaini, to the northern pishbesh. Shnei pishbeshin hayolay l'shar gadol. There were 2 pishbeshin in the great gate. Echad b'tzafa and v'echad b'adaroim, one in the north and one in the south. Sheba adaroim, listen to this. Lo nichnas by adam. There was a door that man, a Kohen, never went through the door. Imagine, there's a door, full-fledged door that you never walk through. We'll see in a minute why. Allah mefurash aydei Cheskel. Cheskel Hanavi teaches us, Shneimar, v'yemar elai Hashem, says Yecheskel, quoting from Hashem, Yecheskel Hanavi, Ashar Hazeh, this gate, Sagor Yiyeh. They built a gate in the Beis HaMikdash, and the sole purpose of this gate was what? Sagor Yiyeh. The gate should be closed. Lo yipaseach, it should never be opened. Ve'ish al yavai boy, and says Yecheskel, man should never walk through this gate. Why not? They made a door that man should never walk through. You know why? Ki Hashem Elokei Yisrael, says Yecheskel, because Hashem himself, Ba'aloi. This is Kaviyachal. We don't understand exactly what this means, but this was the doorway that Hashem himself went through into the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore, V'haya Sagor, and therefore this door was eternally closed. So there's one doorway that was never opened. The doorway, we'll call it the doorway of Hashem. And now there's a second doorway. So Natal as a Mafteach, the Kohen takes the key, Upasach as a Pishpish, and he opens up the small door. V'nichnas lahata, they enter a compartment. Me'ata lehechol, now they enter into the Beis HaMikdash. And until Shemagia l'Shar HaGadol, till they reach the great gate. Higia l'Shar HaGadol. Havir as HaNagar, the Nagar. These are different types of locks that they had on doors. They remove the bolt, and they move the bolt and the locks, and they open up the gate. And this was the first time. This is the opening of the gates. Every morning in the Beis HaMikdash, it says the Mishnah Lo Yeshechet HaShoichet. So remember, the Karban Tamid is waiting. Karban Tamid has to be shechted. But when do they shecht it? Lo Yeshechet HaShoichet. The one who shechted the Karban Tamid would not do so Ad Sheshamei, until he heard what? Shar Gadol Sheniftach. When he would hear the creaking sound of the large gate opening, then he knew it was time for the Avodah, and that's when he would shecht. That's when he would shecht the Karban Tamid. So again, the Karban Tamid is sitting there and waiting. And at what point would they shecht the Karban Tamid? When they hear the gates opening. Continues the Mishnah and teaches us some fascinating details about these gates. We're smack in the middle of Lamed Amid Beis. Says the Mishnah, Me Yerichai, all the way at Yerichai, Hayashayimim Shar Gadol, Kol Shar Gadol Sheniftach. They would hear the sounds of the gates opening, the sounds of the tremendous gates of the Beis HaMikdash made an incredible sound. They heard it all the way at Yerichai. Me Yerichai, similarly, Hayashayimim Kol Magrefa. They would hear the sound of the Magrefa, which was a shovel. Me'ericha Yeshayim Kol Hashir, the sound of Levium singing. And of course, all these things were Nisim of the Beis HaMikdash. Me'ericha Yeshayim Kol Ben Arza Makish Batziltzol. Ben Arza, who played the cymbals in the Beis HaMikdash, we'll see toward the end of the Masechta. When that was happening, that was a symbol, not a symbol, but a symbol, a sign that they could start the Avodah. Me'ericha Yeshayim Kol HaChalil. They would hear the sounds of the flute as well that was played. And continues the Mishnah, Me'ericha, you know what else happened in Yericha? Hayashayim called Givine Kroz. They would hear the sound of Givine the Kroz. Kroz is the one who cries out. He was the one that would get up, he would scream out, it's morning, it's time to perform the Avodah. They heard that all the way Yericha. Me'ericha Hayashayim called Asa ben Katan Mochne Lakiyar. Remember, what did the Kayanim have to do before they started the Beis HaMikdash? They have to wash their hands. Where do they wash their hands from? The Kiyar. Where did the Kiyar get water from? From a well. How did the Kiyar get water from the well? The whole Kiyar was lowered into the ground. How was the Kiyar lowered into the ground? A person by the name of Ben Katin made a mochni, made a whole mechanism to lower the Kiyar into the ground. And early in the morning when the Kiyar is being lowered into the ground, that sound of the mechanism lowering it in was heard all the way in Yericha. Continues the Mishnayos, Me'ericha Yeshayim Kol HaShir. They hear the sounds of the Levium singing, Me'ericha Yeshayim Kol HaShayfer, the Shayfer that was played in the Beis HaMikdash. V'yishayimrim, Ef Koilei Shal Koyin Gadol. Even the sound of the Koyin Gadol that watch, Sheyamaskir Hashem B'Yom HaKippurim. On Yom Kippur, of course, we know the Koyin Gadol said, the Shem HaMefayrash, the 72-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When that was done, they heard that sound all the way at Yerichai. Me'erichai, continues the Mishnah. You know what else happened? They smelled the ketayres as they prepared it all the way at Yerichai. Amar Rav Lazar ben Diglai, Ezim hayal abba. Rav Lazar ben Diglai said that his father had goats, Bahare HaMichvar, in Hare HaMichvar, which is also far away from Yerushalayim. And the goats would sneeze. What would the goats sneeze from? Meireach pita makatayres, from the smell of the ketay. From the smell of the ketayres. I think we should stop. Oh, we can wrap up the perek. 3 more minutes. Mi shezacha. Let's go. We're about to bring the Karban Tamid. After we said all the incredible things that happened, once they opened the gates, they mentioned they opened the gates to Shara Gadol. Once they mentioned opening the gates, So we spoke about all the different things that you heard all the way at Yerichai. But if in the timeline, where are we holding? The Karban Tamid is waiting. So they open the gates. Now it's time for the Karban Tamid. Says the Mishnah, Mishazach Tamid, the one that won the lottery, Teshech Tamid, Mashchai v'holcha bebeisa mitbachayim, would go and pull the Tamid from the slaughterhouse. Mishazach be'evarim holchimai, and the Kohanim that were zeich and the Evarim to bring the Evarim on the Mizbeach would go with him. Beisa mitzvachayim, where was it? Let's finish on Mizbeach on the north. Va'alav shmainim amudim nanasim. Now we get to understand the picture of the Beis HaMikdash. And there were 8 low stone pillars. Uravayim shel erez al gabeim, and on top of these pillars there were cedar wood squares, which had what on them? Va'an kulei shel barzel yakfuyin sham. So we had a pillar with wood with a hook on the top of it. That's where they hung up the animals to skin them. And there were 3 rows of hooks on each and every one of them. That they would hang and they would be mashit al shulchan shel shayish shebein amudim. And then they would put the animal on the marble tables that were between the pillars. So we have all these pillars with the hooks. Then we have the marble tables in front of it. And finally, Misha Zacha B'dishna Mizbeach. Now they're pulling the animals. So what's next? They clean off the Mizbeach. Nichlas v'natal satani. He takes the basket. V'nich lafanav. He places it in front of him. He cleaned off the ashes from the inner Mizbeach, the small Mizbeach, and put it into the basket. Uba'achroina. And finally, Kibir Sashar L'Toichai. They swept the rest of all the ashes into the basket. V'nichai v'yatza. And he placed the basket on the floor. We'll see later on that they came to pick up the basket, the Yatza, and they left the Beis HaMikdash. And finally, Misha Zacha B'disha Minaira. We got to clean out the Minaira. Nichlas, he comes in, and now we have 2 different things that could happen. If if the kohen comes in and he sees the 2 western candles burning, what would he do? Leave them burning. You say it in life, you see a candle burning, you don't blow it out. But what would he do? Medashinis ashar, you would clean out the other candles. You leave those. But what happens? It actually happened that sometimes the western candles did not stay burning. They went out. If they went out, you would clean it out and he would relight it. And then clean out the rest. And finally, there was a stone in front of the menorah with 3 steps that the kohen would stand and clean out the neiros. You leave the jug with all the wicks and leftover oil that he cleaned out on the 2nd step. And he would leave. Baruch Hashem. We finished Daf Lamed, and we'll pick up tomorrow from the 4th perek.